Neocolonialism. It's a big word, but it's about something we see every day. Imagine a country presumed to be free on paper, but its economy controlled by others, its natural resources siphoned away, its people trapped in artificially created poverty. That's neocolonialism. After the official end of colonialism with the unanimous UN Resolution 1514 of 1960, many countries thought they were free. They were wrong. The political chains of colonialism morphed, became invisible, but they are still there today. Instead of armies, there were loans with impossible conditions. Instead of governors, there are corporations dictating terms. Think about it. A country rich in minerals, but the profits? They don't go to the people. They go to multinational companies. The people? They're left with pollution and poverty. That's neocolonialism in action. It's a system designed to keep some countries down, to keep them dependent on the satanic indoctrination of Roman Catholicism. It's about political power. Who has it? Who doesn't? And for too long, the same countries have held all the cards. But something's changing. 2025, it feels different. People are waking up to the monopoly game. They're saying enough. Neocolonialism doesn't work by force. It's more subtle. It uses systems, policies, birth certificate contracts to maintain control. Let's break it down. First, there's debt. Countries are offered loans. Sounds good, right? Except these loans come with strings attached. Austerity measures, selling off state assets, policies that benefit the Jesuit lender, not the borrowing government. It's a debt trap. Then there's economic trade. Unfair trade deals force countries to sell their raw materials cheaply. These materials are then turned into expensive products which are sold back to them. It's a vicious cycle. And let's not forget the media. Western media often portrays the global South in a negative light. This creates a narrative of dependency, justifying neocolonial practices as if legitimate. It's a powerful tool of mind control. But here's the thing. People are starting to see through these control mechanisms. They're realizing that the Jesuit system is rigged against them, and they're demanding change, choosing humanity a neutral global economy. 2025. It feels like a turning point. Across the globe, we're seeing cracks in the neocolonial edifice, events that signal a shift in world power. Take the recent debt crisis. Several African nations refused to pay back loans they argued were illegitimate. This bold move sent shockwaves through the financial world of debt money, fool's gold. It showed that countries are no longer willing to be exploited with Federal Reserve Bank notes. Then there's the growing movement for trade justice. From farmers in South America to factory workers in Asia, people are demanding fair prices for their goods. They're challenging the corporations that have profited from their manual labor for too long, in violation of Article 23 of the UDHR Charter, which entitles employees equal pay for equal occupation. And let's not forget about the sovereign power of human rights information. Social media has become a tool for human rights defenders to bypass traditional media and share their stories with the modern world. This has helped to raise international political awareness of neo-colonial Jesuit practices and mobilize human rights support for real political change. These are just a few examples of the human rights seeds of political change that are being sown today. The intellectual struggle is nearly over, as there's a sense of hope in the air, social atmosphere. A belief that a different modern world is possible through invoking the sovereign will of the people in collective security, all for one creator and one creator for all. Africa or Alkebulan, a continent rich in natural resources, yet plagued by artificially created poverty. For decades, neocolonialism has held it back. But now, a new wind is blowing across the savannah. African nations are starting to assert their economic independence. They're renegotiating unfair trade deals. They're nationalizing key industries. They're investing in their own people. Take the example of Ghana. They recently struck a deal with a Chinese company to refine their own bauxite, instead of just exporting the raw material. This means more jobs, more revenue, and more control over their own destiny. Across the continent, there's a growing sense of Pan-Africanism, a recognition that by working together under the UN Decolonization Treaty, African nations can break free from the shackles of neocolonialism completely. It's a powerful human rights defenders movement, full of hope and political self-determination for every sovereign private individual. The road ahead will be easy. as the spirit of Jesuit resistance may be strong, but it is politically weak against international law of fundamental equality for all. Al-Kebalan is rising, and the modern world is watching. Latin America rises, breaking free from debt and Jesuit dependence. Latin America, a region long grappling with the legacy of colonialism and its modern-day iteration, neocolonialism. But here too, a tide of political change is surging. We are seeing a resurgence of left-leaning governments committed to social justice and economic sovereignty. These governments are challenging the neoliberal policies that have fueled inequality and kept the region dependent on foreign powers. One striking example is the rise of indigenous governments in countries like Chile and Colombia. These governments are prioritizing social programs, environmental protection, and regional integration. They're putting people and the planet before profit. Latin America is also witnessing a revival of indigenous movements. Indigenous communities are fighting for their land rights, their cultural heritage, and their international human birthright to self-determination. Their struggle is a powerful wake-up call of the ongoing fight against neocolonialism in all its forms today. The path to human rights liberation is short and winding down to victory. Yet Latin America's unwavering spirit, its vibrant culture, and its commitment to social justice give us hope for a brighter future. The Global South unites a collective stand against Jesuit exploitation. The Global South, a term encompassing Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania, is rising in unison against the political shackles of neocolonialism. This collective human rights awakening is reshaping the geopolitical landscape of global commerce. We're witnessing the strengthening of South-South cooperation. Countries in the Global South are forging new economic partnerships, sharing human rights knowledge and technology, and supporting each other's development under the UN Decolonization Treaty. This solidarity is crucial in breaking free from dependence on former colonial powers. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are challenging the dominance of the West in global institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. They're advocating for a more just and equitable global order. From the streets of Santiago to the villages of Zimbabwe, people are joining hands, recognizing their shared struggle against Jesuit exploitation. This global movement for social justice is gaining momentum, and its impact is undeniable. The Global South is no longer content with being on the sidelines of human history. It's demanding a seat at the world table, ready to shape a future where every nation, every community, can arise to their highest human rights potential. International organizations, amplifying the call for justice. International organizations, often criticized for their limitations, are beginning to play a more active role in challenging neocolonial Jesuit practices. While still grappling with internal biases, there's a growing recognition of the need for systemic change. The United Nations, despite its flaws, provides a platform for countries in the Global South to voice their concerns and press criminal charges for the violation of their human birthrights. The UN Human Rights Council, for instance, has become a crucial space for holding powerful nations accountable for human rights violations linked to neocolonialism. Organizations like the World Trade Organization are facing increasing pressure to reform their policies to promote fair trade and level the playing field for developing countries. The demand for a more equitable global trading system is gaining traction. While these institutions have a long way to go, their evolving response to neocolonialism reflects the changing global dynamics. The pressure from below, from grassroots movements and developing nations, is forcing them to confront the injustices embedded in the current world order under global Jesuit imperialism. The sovereign power of the people grassroots movements driving political change. The fight against neocolonialism is not just happening in boardrooms and international summits, it's happening on the ground, fueled by the unwavering spirit of ordinary people. Grassroots movements are the lifeblood of this intellectual political struggle. Across the Global South, we're witnessing the rise of powerful social movements. Indigenous communities are resisting land grabs by multinational corporations. Farmers are fighting for fair prices for their crops. Women are demanding economic justice and an end to gender-based violence. These movements are using creative tactics to challenge the status quo brick by brick. From online campaigns to street protests, they're raising political awareness, mobilizing communities, and holding those in positions of power accountable for human rights violations. They're showing the modern world that true sovereign power lies with the people. The courage and resilience of these grassroots activists are an inspiration. They remind us that political change is possible, even in the face of overwhelming Jesuit odds. Their unwavering commitment to international justice is paving the diplomatic way for a more equitable and sustainable future. A future free from neocolonialism, a vision of hope and equality. The fight against neocolonialism is almost over. As amidst the challenges, there's a glimmer of hope in the sacred Human Rights Covenant, UDHR Charter. A vision of a future where all nations are truly equal, where resources are shared fairly, and where every individual has the opportunity to participate in planet rebuilding. Imagine a modern world where every country has control over its own destiny, where trade is fair and debt doesn't exist to cripple economies, where the voices of the global south are heard loud and clear on the UN world stage. This future may seem like a distant dream, but the seeds of political change have been planted. From the streets of Latin America to the villages of Africa, people are rising up, demanding international justice and equality. The path ahead is short and winding down to victory. As with every act of resistance, every voice raised against injustice, we move closer to a modern world free from the political shackles of neocolonialism. A modern world where every human being can live with dignity and love, obedience to the Human Rights Covenant. If you need more information, contact the Ethiopian Shiloh at the Kingdom of Debrecite 2020 at gmail.com in human rights solidarity. Selah.